Hey, everybody. Ever sit down and think about how weird it is that we all share the same calendar, the same months, the same leap year rule, and still manage to get completely confused by the way time is counted? Let me take you back to 1961. That year, the world was still using the Gregorian calendar the way we do now, but imagine a tiny pocket of humanity that was measuring years from a completely different starting point, so different that the next time that same oddball system would line up with ours, 1T happened until 2069. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi plot, right? That little time paradox is the perfect reminder that history is full of loopy, mind-bending details that most of us never learned in school. Today, I'm going to hand you 10 of those. Wait, what? Nuggets, each one a bite-sized story that will make you look at the past a little differently and maybe even question how you count the years on your phone. Strap in because we're about to dive deep into ancient empires, bizarre political stunts, and scientific oddities that will spin your brain like a poorly calibrated turnstile. Ready? Let's go. 1. The illusion of antiquity when you close eyes and picture ancient Egypt. The first image that pops up is usually the Great Pyramid of Giza, a massive stone monument that has stood for millennia. But here's the twist. The last native Egyptian pharaoh, Cleopatra, died in 30 AD by that point. The pyramids were already 2,800 years old. For the people living in Cleopatra's day, those stone triangles were ancient relics, just as the moai of Easter Island feel to us now. Cleopatra herself famously claimed that her reign was closer to the moon than to the building of the Great Pyramid. In other words, the distance in time between her coronation and the completion of the pyramid was far greater than the distance between her and the moon. A poetic way of saying those monuments were already part of the antique landscape. So the next time a travel documentary says the pyramids are 5,000 years old, remember that the Egyptians themselves, those blocks were already old news. To the Senator Horst, now picture Caligula, the Roman emperor who made a career out of shocking the Senate. Apart from his notorious parties, Caligula had a pet horse named Incitatus that he adored a little. Too much? According to the ancient historians, Caligula planned to make Incitatus consul the highest elected office in the Roman Republic, which the empire still used as a prestige title. Some sources even claim that Incitatus was given a marble stall, an ivory manger, and a necklace of jewels. The horse apparently had a personal house staff, complete with a household of servants to tend to his needs. Historians still debate whether the story was a political satire by Caligula's enemies or a genuine episode of excess. Either way, the image of a horse parading through the Senate is enough to make even the most jaded political commentator gasp. If you ever feel your office politics are out of control, just remember, at least you're not a horse lobbying for a seat in the Roman government. 3. The rhinoceros vote. Fast forward a few centuries, and we land in Brazil, 1959. A journalist named Lamberto Magli decided to stage the ultimate protest against the municipal elections in São Paulo. He nominated a rhinoceros named Cacareco, a resident of the city zoo, as a candidate for city council. The rationale: voters were disillusioned with the political establishment, and writing Cacarico on the ballot became a symbolic act of rebellion. When the votes were tallied, the rhinoceros never delivered a speech, never attended a council meeting, and certainly didn't file any paperwork, received more than 100,000 votes. The episode sparked a national conversation about voter apathy, protest voting, and the limits of democratic expression, while Cacareco never took office. His fanciful campaign lives on as a case study in political science, courses on symbolic voting, and electoral satire. So the next time you think your ballot choices are boring, just picture a rhino in a suit stealing the spotlight. 4. Royal bloodlines on the mix. The British royal family is famous for its intricate genealogy: Saxon, Norman, German, you name it. But one of the more surprising revelations from recent DNA studies is that the lineage also includes Jewish, African, and Muslim ancestors. Let's break it down. Henry VIII, the sixth-wife king, had a great-grandfather who was a Moorish noble from the Iberian Peninsula that Moore married into the Castilian royal house, and his descendants eventually intertwined with the English crown. In addition, a 13th century Castilian princess who was a direct descendant of the Umayyad dynasty that ruled parts of Spain married an English noble. Their bloodline traveled north, merging with the Plantagenets. Fast forward a few generations, and you have King Henry VIII, the very same monarch who broke with the Catholic Church carrying Muslim blood in his veins. Meanwhile, Why DNA testing in living members of the House of Windsor has identified sub-Saharan African haplogroups, confirming genealogical ties to ancient African kingdoms. And on the Jewish side, a medieval marriage between a Portuguese Jew and an English aristocrat placed Jewish ancestry into the royal line. The upshot: every member of the British monarchy is, in a literal sense, a global citizen, a living reminder that the borders we draw on maps are far more porous than we like to think. 5. The 38-minute war. In August 1896, the British Empire pressed the Sultan of Zanzibar, a tiny island off the east coast of Africa, to accept a successor they had handpicked. The Sultan refused, choosing his own candidate instead. The British issued an ultimatum: surrender the throne to their nominee by 9 o'clock. When the deadline passed, British warships opened fire on the Sultan's palace. The bombardment lasted between 38 and 45 minutes. The exact duration is still debated among historians, but it certainly didn't reach an hour. Within that half hour, the palace was reduced to rubble. The Sultan's forces were decimated, and the British declared victory. By the end of the clash, over 500 of the Sultan's men were dead or wounded, while the British suffered only one casualty, single sailor who was slightly injured by shrapnel. The result: Zanzibar became a British protectorate for the next 38 years. So the next time you're late for a meeting and think you wasted chimi, remember there was a war that ended before you could even make a cup of coffee. 6. Incendiary balloon invasion. When we think of World War II air attacks, the images that spring to mind are fighter planes, bombers, and the infamous Pearl Harbor strike. Yet, in the summer of 1944, the Japanese military launched a secret weapon that looked less like a plane and more like a large weather balloon. The strategy, codenamed Fugo, involved releasing approximately 9,000 hydrogen-filled balloons equipped with incendiary and anti-personnel bombs. Each balloon carried a small sandbag ballast that would drop as the balloon lost altitude, allowing it to travel thousands of miles across the Pacific, riding the jet stream toward the continental United States. By the time the balloons reached North America, only about 1,000 had survived the journey. Of those, 285 incidents were officially recorded, mostly small forest fires in the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest. The most tragic case happened in May 1945 near Portland, Oregon, where a balloon ignited a home fire that claimed the lives of 5 members of a single family. That incident remains the only civilian deaths on U.S. soil caused by enemy action during World War II. The Fugo campaign, ultimately ineffective. Most balloons either fell harmlessly into the ocean or burned out before reaching any sizable target. Still, the very notion of balloons as weapons adds a surreal, almost cartoonish layer to the already complex tapestry of World War II tactics. 7. The survivor of 2 atomic bombs. Most people know the story of Hiroshima, the first city ever hit by a nuclear weapon, on the 6th of August 1945. Fewer know about Yamaguchi, a name that reads like a footnote in a textbook, but whose life reads like a thriller. Yamaguchi was a salesman for a Japanese trading company, traveling on a train when the little boy bomb detonated over Hiroshima. He was approximately 5 kilometers, about 3 miles from ground zero. The blast threw him to the ground, shattered his eardrums, and left him with temporary blindness and severe burns. Miraculously, he survived the immediate after effects, managed to board a train, and returned to his hometown of Nagasaki 3 days later. On the 9th of August, the Fat Man bomb exploded over Nagasaki just 72 hours after the first strike. Yamaguchi, still recovering, once again found himself within a few kilometers of a mushroom cloud. He described the second explosion as a blinding flash followed by a deafening roar, and he survived a second round of radiation and thermal injury. Yamaguchi lived until 2010, passing away at 93 years old. In 1999, the Japanese government officially recognized him as the only person confirmed to have survived the effects of both atomic bombs. His story is a stark reminder of the human cost of nuclear warfare and an extraordinary testament to resilience. 8. Firefighter's blue eyes. When the Chernobyl disaster occurred on the 26th of April 1986, the world watched in horror as a reactor at the Kiju nuclear power plant erupted in a fiery explosion, spewing radioactive material into the atmosphere. Among the first responders was Vladimir Pavlov, a firefighter who rushed into the reactor's unit for almost immediately after the blast. Pavlov's exposure to the intense ionizing radiation was so severe that it caused a rare physiological effect. His brown irises turned a vivid blue within 24 hours. The phenomenon, known as radiation-induced cataractogenesis, is extremely uncommon, and the rapid color change made his case a medical curiosity. Pavlov survived only 15 days after the incident, succumbing to acute radiation syndrome. His sacrifice, alongside hundreds of other liquidators, highlighted the human toll of nuclear accidents and underscored the importance of protective gear and proper emergency protocols in radiological emergencies. Today, Pavlov's story is taught in radiology and emergency response training as a stark illustration of the invisible but deadly power of ionizing radiation. 9. The oldest known human portrait photography appeared in the early 19th century, but before it, humanity captured likenesses with paintings, sketches, and sculptures. The first widely recognized photograph of a human face was taken by Robert Cornelius in 1839, a self-portrait known as yet a much earlier image exists, albeit less famous. In 1836, a French photographer, using the daguerreotype process, captured a street scene on a Parisian balcony. In the lower left of that composition, a young man polishing a shoe can be seen. The photograph, titled The Artisan on the Balcony, predates Cornelius's portrait by 3 years. The man's identity remains unknown, but scholars estimate he was in his early 20s, making him possibly the earliest known human subject captured on a camera. A few years later, in 1838, Robert Cornelius produced the first photographic portrait that was intentionally staged as self-portrait taken in his family. SC backyard. This image became the benchmark for early photographic portraiture. So, while Cornelius often receives the credit, the shoe polisher of Paris might actually hold the title of the first person ever photographed. A reminder that history loves to shine a spotlight on the most convenient narrative. 10. The lost history of the Indus Valley when you think of ancient civilizations. The names that usually pop up are Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Yet, there is a mysterious culture that predates many of these and remains shrouded in mystery. The Indus Valley civilization. Archaeological evidence shows that settlements like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro flourished as early as 7000 BC and possibly even 200,000 years ago, according to recent carbon dating of pre-urban layers. However, the people of this civilization left behind no deciphered scripta. Indus script still resists full translation, and only a few dozen short inscriptions have been found. Written records from the region appeared only around 4000 BC, meaning that for roughly 96% of the civilization's existence, we have no written documentation. The knowledge we have comes from archaeological layers, pottery shards, sealed jars, and city layouts, all of which tell us the Indus people built sophisticated urban centers, advanced drainage systems, and standardized weights and measures. Yet, the bulk of their stories, myths, daily conversations, and political debates are lost forever, likely destroyed by fire, flooding, or the relentless passage of time. The Indus Valley stands as a monumental reminder that the majority of human history is a silent, invisible tapestry waiting for future discoveries or perhaps never to be known at all. There you have it, 10 mind-blowing facts that prove history isn't just a dry list of dates, but a living collage of oddities, coincidences, and human quirks. From pyramids that were already ancient for the Egyptians themselves, to a rhino that outvoted human candidates, and a war that ended before your coffee could even brew. We've seen how the past loves to surprise us. The common thread: time is both fleeting and stubborn. It erodes and impedes, yet it preserves the strangest stories for us to uncover centuries later. So, don't waste yours. Hit subscribe, ring that notification bell, and share this video with anyone who thinks they've heard every historical fact out there. And remember, the next Chimi twist, like the 1961 2069 calendar quirk, may not show up again for a whole generation. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and enjoy the present. Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.